Welcome, everyone. It is so great to be together with you all tonight. Whether you have been coming to Challenge for a long time or if this is your first time here, we are just so glad you're here. It's a lot of fun to be together with you all. My name is Jim Woods, and I'm on staff with Christian Challenge. And typically on a Thursday night, you'll find me over by the soundboard helping the tech run smoothly. So if there's ever any tech issues on a Thursday night, you can blame me. It's my fault. So, and that's the only time you realize that tech exists, right, is when there's a problem. But anyways, another thing that I do is I'm involved with Challenge's sexual restoration ministry. And I love getting to be involved with that and a part of that. But the real reason that I'm here and that my wife is here serving with Challenge is we love to invest in the lives of college students and you. And speaking of my wife, here she is with our two kiddos. They're precious, I know. There she is. And our son, Javier, he is 3.5. And our daughter, Jocelyn, is 2. And here in, about a week or so, we are going to be welcoming baby number 3. We're so pumped. So here's the deal. I'm going to leave my phone up here. And if my wife calls me and tells me she's going into labor, I'm going to go. Sean, you got this, man. You can figure something out. So just to give you guys a heads up. Really excited. On a serious note, though, as we dive into tonight's material, I want you to know if you're just checking this stuff out and you're not even sure what you believe about Jesus or the Bible, I want you to know I think this is a really good community to get involved with. I think tonight's going to be really good for you and really helpful potentially. And I think that you'll find, if you stick around Challenge long enough, I think you'll find that this is just a good space to be in, a good community to be in, to sort through some of the things that you believe. And last week, Brian kicked off a series that we're going through called Encounter, when a moment can rewrite your story. And in this series, we're looking at a few different stories of the life of Jesus. And these stories are when Jesus encounters someone whose life is utterly broken. And sometimes they don't even realize how broken it is. And when they encounter Jesus, it's a moment that everything changes. Their story, in a sense, gets rewritten. It's a moment of encounter, and suddenly they have the opportunity for their whole life to begin going in a new direction. And they can begin to experience transformation. And I really believe that Jesus is still doing this sort of thing today. And I believe that because I've seen it in my own life, and I see it all the time in the lives of students. And tonight we're going to look at another encounter that someone had with Jesus. And this is a person who was just totally covered in shame. And as we hear this story, I want to invite you to just think about your own life. Have you ever felt shame? Maybe it's for something that you've done or for something that's been done to you. I know for me, in my own life, shame can cause me to feel really cut off from people. Like I'm not good enough or acceptable, or like I'll never be good enough to be in relationship or quality relationship with others. And it can make me feel like I'm dirty. Or like if I ever want to live a normal life, I've got to get myself kind of cleaned up or something. And I just can't seem to do it. Tonight, we're going to read a story about someone who felt this way. And it comes to us from the biography of Jesus' life in John chapter 4. So if you've got your Bibles, you can turn with me there, or the words will be on the screen as well. So John 4, and we're going to be starting in verse 3. He, that is Jesus, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. All right, so this encounter took place at the historic site known as Jacob's Well. It's in Palestine, and it's still there today. The well is still there. And there's a monastery that's actually been built around it. And the well is about at the halfway point on Jesus' journey from Judea to Galilee. And so it certainly makes sense that he would stop there for a break with his disciples to get food and refreshment. However, when it says that Jesus had to pass through Samaria, there's a clear double meaning here. Because yes, it was on his way to Galilee, but he also had another agenda. He was seeking something. And now let's take a minute to just kind of soak in and feel the weight of this encounter with this woman at the well. Because there are some pretty significant barriers between Jesus and this woman. So, first, she was a Samaritan, and he was a Jew. And for centuries prior to this, tensions between these two groups, the Samaritans and the Jews, had been building for years and years, and they'd gotten really intense. The source of these tensions really had to circulate around kind of what these people groups thought it meant to be God's chosen people. And essentially, at the bottom of it, both groups, this is a generalization, they kind of thought that they were more important than the other, okay? And this wasn't just kind of a slight bitterness. I mean, there were legitimate historic hate crimes between these two people groups that really were escalating in a really significant way. It was getting really nasty between them. This is nasty, horrific racism at its worst. And so there was a clear ethnic barrier here between the two of them. Next, Samaritans and Jews, they had opposing religious beliefs that really clashed with each other. The religion of the Jews taught that the proper place to gather and worship God was in the city of Jerusalem. And so that's where they had their temple built to worship God. But the Samaritans had a different belief. They believed that the place of worship was in a different space called Mount Gerizim. And so they built a rival temple on this mountain. And so they had conflicting religious views on what it meant to worship God and where the right space to worship God was. So there was a significant religious barrier between Jesus and this woman. And then next, Jesus was a man. And here he's found talking alone at a well with a woman. And in this particular cultural context, men and women didn't really associate with each other like this in public spaces, especially because it could lead to rumors of affairs and such. And since Jesus had assumed the role of a religious teacher, this is particularly striking. So there was a barrier of gender here. And then there was something else. And this isn't crystal clear at this point in the story, but notice in verse 6 it says that it was the 6th hour. That is the 6th hour from sunrise. So ballpark, it was about noon, right? Which is kind of the hottest part of the day. And typically in villages like this in these ancient times, people would go out to a well to get water either in the early hours of the day or kind of later in the evening to avoid the heat. And they would go out together in groups. And so it's strange that this woman was coming during the hottest part of the day by herself. Why? There's something about her. There's something about her that had either caused her to feel like she couldn't go with everyone else, or she maybe has even been told directly and explicitly by someone that you cannot go with us to the well. You can't associate with us. She was a social outcast, and we'll see in a minute why that is. But for now, it's worth noting that there was a social barrier between her and Jesus. And there's one more barrier that will come up later, but we can already see that there are several obstacles, several barriers in play between Jesus and this woman. And Jesus has just pushed past all of these barriers and asked this woman for a drink. So let's see what her response is. Verse 9. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" She's acknowledging the barriers between the two of them. For Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it was that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water." So last week, Brian talked to us about the story of Zacchaeus and Zacchaeus' encounter with Jesus. And in that story, something that was really powerful and unique was how Zacchaeus really fought for and sought after Jesus. And he wasn't going to miss his opportunity to encounter and see Jesus. He had heard about him, he knew who he was, or at least knew something about him, and he sought after him. But this story is a little bit different. This woman doesn't even recognize who Jesus is. She's confused and oblivious to who he is and really what he's offering to her. But Jesus is resolute. This is the first thing that I want you to see about Jesus. It's so beautiful. I want you to learn this from this story, that here he is the one pursuing her. Jesus pursues people. And this is really significant. He doesn't just sit back and wait for us to come to him. He doesn't just wait for people to come to him. He is after this woman's heart, and he is trying to offer her thirst-quenching living water. Jesus doesn't just wait for you to come to him. He lovingly pursued this woman with the gift of living water, and he wants to lovingly pursue our hearts as well. Let me give you kind of just a picture of this kind of pursuit when someone doesn't even know what their real need is. Several years ago, my wife and I, we got involved in foster care. We got our foster care license, and we began taking some kids into our home that were coming into the system. And along this journey, we met several other families who were also foster parents. And as we talked to them and learned from them and just tried to kind of get some tips and ideas from them, something that we quickly heard from them, and we quickly began to experience this for ourselves, is that foster care is really hard. And the kids that are coming into, many of the kids that are coming into the foster care system, they don't even realize how shattered their stories really are. Many of them are coming from just horrifically broken homes with drugs and various forms of abuse and neglect, and it's just really painful. Each kid that would come into our home, they come with basically they call it a blue book, and it's just this book that just kind of explains what's known about their story. And so when a kid would come into our home, we'd read over this, and our hearts would just break over what's going on in their stories. But to many of these kids, this was just normal life. It didn't feel strange or broken. It just felt like this is life. This is what it is. And so as my wife and I, we were talking with other families that were involved in foster care, something that we kept hearing over and over again was just how difficult it was sometimes to just keep loving these kids when they just kind of almost resisted the love that you were trying to offer them. It was really painful. It was really hard for them. And we quickly began learning this for ourselves. We took in 2 brothers into our home. This was several years ago. And the older of the 2 really had a hard time. He had an incredibly painful story. And something in him just could not accept the fact that we loved him or that he was lovable. He could not make sense of that. And I remember so many times, I remember one time in specific that, he was just so full of hate and anger and pain that he was just screaming at us. And he told this to us often, but this time he was screaming it at me. Just, you don't love me. You don't love me. Nobody loves me. And I just remember trying to just lovingly just communicate to him, I love you. That's why you're in our home. That's why we're feeding you. We care about you. That's why I'm trying to do some fun things and I know this is a cruddy situation, but we're trying to make this as good as we can, man. Like, I love you. No, you don't love me. It's not true. And he just couldn't make sense of it. The dots just were not connecting in his brain. It was heartbreaking. Something really beautiful about the story is years later, earlier this year actually, I got a text from an unknown number, and it was this guy. And he basically just said, I'm sorry for what I put you guys through. Thank you for taking me into your home. Thank you for helping me. You were just trying to love us the way kids should be loved. You're just trying to take care of us. I couldn't believe it. That is not a normal thing in foster care. If any of you are thinking of getting involved in foster care, don't think that that's what's going to normally happen. It was beautiful. It wrecked me. But it brought me back to this moment that he just could not accept our love at that time. He didn't even know what he needed. And I think that that's similar to this woman here, because here Jesus, the Holy One of God, is standing there right in front of her, and he is offering her living water. He's offering her living water, and she doesn't even understand what's going on. The writer of this book, John, the disciple of Jesus, uses this language of living water a few times, and it consistently means the same thing in his writings. It refers to Jesus' personal presence, his spirit that is always available to those who receive it. That's why he talks about it like it's a spring of water that is constantly producing refreshing, cool, restorative water, even in the heat of the day. Jesus is offering his most precious and personal gift to this woman, but she doesn't quite get it yet. So Jesus keeps leaning in. Let's see where this goes. Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." So this is a confusing statement here. The reason, though, that Jesus says this is that in this cultural context, the husband was the one who could offer lodging or hospitality to Jesus and his disciples. It's likely that as Jesus is dialoguing with this woman, he's perceiving that this woman may be open to talking more about these matters. And he's perceiving, it would probably be better to talk about these things over a longer period of time. And so he invites her to go and call her husband and come back, and they can continue the conversation. But then the story shifts a bit. The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband.' For you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say, you, as in the Jews, you say, where are we at? You say that it is in Jerusalem, the place where the people ought to worship." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. And when he comes, he will tell us all things." Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." I just love Jesus. He is so awesome. He asked her, he invited her, "Go call your husband and come here." And when she reports not having one, he gives a response that only someone with divine insight could possibly know. He explains to her her whole story, her relationship with men, and how she had had 5 husbands, and now she was living or sexually involved with someone else. And this whole thing about the 5 husbands, I mean, this is really significant. This is really heart-wrenching to think about, because this either means that she has survived the death of 5 husbands, or that she has been divorced multiple times, or some combination of the two of those. Can you imagine the pain in this woman's story? Can you imagine what she's feeling and carrying inside? And now she's sexually involved with another man who is not her husband. And this was religiously and culturally looked down on by both Samaritans and Jews. We now understand why she is likely coming to the well alone. This is why she was a social outcast. She's living in sexual brokenness and has experienced rejection because of it. So remember the barriers between this woman and Jesus. There was an ethnic and religious and gender and social barriers between them. And this is the final barrier. There was a moral barrier. Jesus was the perfect and holy one of God, and she was living in sexual brokenness. Normally, that's a really significant divide, especially if you think about this cultural context. Man, that kind of a barrier would be huge, but Jesus pursues her right through this. He doesn't shame her for it. He doesn't look down on her. He cares for her. He values her. He even validates the truth of what she said. He's so kind. He's so compassionate. He's reaching out towards her and offering her life through all of this. He's so kind and gentle with her in these moments. And this is totally consistent with how Jesus treats people throughout the stories of his life. Throughout all these stories, anytime Jesus encounters people with sexually broken stories, or people who are just covered in shame and brokenness because of the things that they have done or the things that have been done to them, he is never harsh or shaming towards them. The people he's harsh towards, they're the proud. They're the people that are closed off from him, that are rejecting him. The people, the religious leaders who have no space or categories for what Jesus is up to and what he's offering to this world. But to the desperate, to the broken, he is full of kindness and gentleness, always. I want you to see this about Jesus. He is gentle and compassionate with those who feel shame and brokenness. He honors them. Yes, he exposes their sins and calls them out. But yes, he does that, but he is full of compassion, offering living water. He wanted to bring life to someone who is broken here at the well, and he even honors her by revealing who he truly was to her. He was revealing that he was the Messiah, God's unique representative and the Savior of the world. And he wants to bring that kind of restoration to our stories too. Listen to me. Jesus was not ashamed of the brokenness of this woman's story, and he is not ashamed of you either. He is not ashamed of your story. He wants to engage you. Regardless of any sin or habitual brokenness in your life, or wound or rejection from other people, he is after your heart. In the same way that divine providence brought this woman to the well to meet Jesus face to face, that same divine providence may be bringing you to this moment to meet Jesus in spirit and in truth. That's real. He wants to extract brokenness from your life and flood your heart with the healing, cooling, refreshing, living water of his nearness. I can relate to this woman's story on multiple levels. When I was 11, I stumbled upon internet pornography on my parents' computer. And that kick-started a ruthless and long addiction to pornography in my life. It was crippling. I also have experienced painful sexual wounding from others that left me feeling invaded, violated, taken advantage of, and ultimately rejected. And with all of this burdening me in my earlier years, shame just beat down on my life. And I felt horrible because I was a Christian. I was trying to follow Jesus. I was trying to do the stuff, but no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't stop. I just couldn't get away from these broken patterns in my life. But then something happened. There's a night in my story that I remember that I was talking with someone, and I began to share and open up with them about what was going on. Josh, thanks. Not yet. It's really, really impactful though, right? No, you're good. You can hop off. I'll let you know. It's really well timed, actually. I mean, it's really, really powerful. That was awesome. Let's bring it back in. So I want to, give it up for Josh. He's doing amazing. Let me tell you about this though. So there's this moment, this significant moment in my story. I was so crippled by shame in my story. I was felt so cast aside by it, so rejected in it. And there's this moment, I remember I was talking with somebody and trying to be open with them. And what had happened in my life, I just begun to really conceal so many elements of the brokenness in my life. I tried to keep it hidden, tried to hide it from people or minimize how serious the issue was. And there was this moment, this powerful moment when I was talking with this person, and as I began to share with them, I just felt I can't keep hiding. I can't keep minimizing. I just have to tell the full story. And as I did, I was weeping, and I just felt so gross as the details of my story were coming up. And it was brutal. I felt like my skin was crawling. And in my head, I just kept thinking, this is it. This is the moment of rejection. I'm finally getting it all out there, and I'm finally going to get what I deserve. I'm finally going to be rejected because of how broken my story is. But then something happened. The person I was sharing with, they came close to me. They wrapped me up in their arms, and they held my head close to them. And I could like see their arms in front of my face as they were holding me. And it was so uncomfortable for me. And eventually I finally just said, look, I don't want to touch me right now. Why are you touching me? But they just kept holding me. And as they did, my shame just began to just melt. I felt undeserving of an encounter with Jesus. But in that moment, he pursued me through this person. I recall even just seeing Jesus in my mind, just saying, Jim, I always want to hold you. He pursues us. He is gentle and compassionate with us. And finally, he offers us living water. That night, when I was being held in the midst of my brokenness, I felt the reality of this living water. It was as if I was dying of thirst after struggling with my issues and trying to clean myself up. I felt like I had run a marathon in 100-degree weather. And the sun was beating down on me, and then suddenly someone just plunged me into a cool, refreshing spring of water. And just like he offered this woman living water, he offers it to us. And it can change everything. This living water, his personal presence wants to fill every space within you and scream to you that you are loved no matter what, and he wants to come near. Let's see what this living water did to this woman. Just then, when his disciples came back, they marveled that he was talking with a woman. But no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" So the woman left her water jar and went away into the town and said to the people, "Come see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" They went out of the town and were coming to him. This woman went from being a social outcast who wouldn't even come to the well with her community to running through the streets of her town, inviting people to come and experience Jesus in the same way that she had. Perhaps you can relate to this woman in the story in some way. Maybe you struggle with addiction to unwanted sexual behaviors, or have been hurt or rejected by others like her. Or maybe you just feel a heavy sense of shame for something in your past. I want to reiterate this. Jesus is pursuing your heart. He wants to be in relationship with you. This is true of you, or if you are a Christian or not. He is reaching out to you. And tonight, you need to decide if you will open up to his love and to his nearness or not. Will you simply say in your heart, "Okay, Jesus, I'll let you touch me. I'll let you pursue me. I will let you encounter me." Now Josh is going to go ahead and come on up to the stage. And he's just going to play for a few minutes or so. And I just want to give you some space to reflect on some of this, to think through some of this. There will be some questions on the screen here in a minute that will help you kind of think through some of these things. And you can use this time to write or to pray or to simply feel the pursuit of Jesus and move into believing the truth that Jesus wants to move toward you. To acknowledge your brokenness to yourself and to God, and to admit your need for him, for living water. Tell him you're ready and desperate for his help, and that you cannot handle your brokenness on your own. If you want to talk with somebody, or you feel like you're stuck in some broken sexual pattern and you just don't know how to get unstuck, we would love to talk with you more. This is kind of a hard space to do that in, but when you walked in tonight, you should have been handed a connection card. And you can fill this out on a hard copy, or you can scan the QR code and fill it out on your phone. But if you feel like you're stuck in something and you need to talk with somebody more, man, I'd encourage you to scan it and to fill it out, because here's the deal. We've got a couple of options. One, you can just simply check the box and say, "I want to talk to a staff person about what's going on in my life." And we'd love to sit down with you. Another option is Challenge has these amazing groups. They're called sexual restoration groups. They're these 8-week groups. You can come together in a small, tight community and work through some of the things that you're going through, some of the broken patterns. that are in your life. And you can fill out this form and check those boxes if that seems helpful to you at all. But for now, I'm just going to pray and just give you guys some space to think through some of this and to feel the pursuit of Jesus. And then in a little bit, Sean will invite us to stand and sing together. Father, thank you that you are after our hearts. Thank you that you are pursuing us. Thank you that you aren't waiting for us to clean ourselves up. Thank you that you're in it with us, calling out to us, like to a child who doesn't even know what he needs, saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. I pray for everyone here tonight. I pray that you would help us to believe the reality of your nearness, the reality of your love, and that we'd let you in, that we'd say yes.